Welcome to
Morning.
Syd. Yeah, welcome to Syd Malcolm.
Thank you.
Syd, welcome. And it's going to be you alone, I think, or we might have your friend coming in, Pat.
Yeah, Pat may come in if he got done with his doctor's appointment. Pat brings a lot to the table, so I would have him in. If he can't make it today, he'll be on a future show.
Okay.
Pat served in Vietnam. Pat reached the rank of Brigadier General.
Wow.
He is the head of the Rainbow Division of the U.S. Army alumni, and is the incoming commander of Nassau County American Legion. And he was in the educational field of his career path, and just a great guy.
Definitely, I want to get him on.
Yeah.
But anyway, what would you like to discuss today, now that we don't have Pat?
Well, we're very involved right now. I'm trying to get the next generation of mathematicians to be inspired by a project that I did 30 years ago. And that was to introduce home run measurement into Major League Baseball.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. In December of 1990, I took a invention that I had and I tested it out at Yankee Stadium. The Yankee management gave me permission to use their stadium to set up a device that could calculate how far a ball was hit. And I got all the kinks out of it. And April 16th, 1991, coming on 30 years, I had my first demonstration at a Major League Baseball game, the San Francisco Giants versus the Los Angeles Dodgers at Candlestick Park. And I was invited to set up in one of their suites. And that's an important part of the story. And I had my wife with me because along the same time, I was able to go out there representing the Lawrence Public Schools school board. I had been elected to the school board 2 years earlier, and there was a national meeting at the convention center in San Francisco. And knowing that I was going out there, I reached out to the Giants. They were interested in seeing the invention, and we made up to do a demo on opening weekend. And the Giants and the Dodgers play each other in back-to-back games for opening weekend. It's been like that way for many, many years. I'm pretty sure it'll be the Dodger Giants this year as well.
When you say Giants, can I boo, being a Brooklynite?
Absolutely. Being brought up a Dodger fan as I was, I had a little bit more of my feelings towards the Dodgers, but I left being a Dodger fan when Sandy Koufax retired in 1966. And I meandered to the New York Mets, which was a sad choice. And then as Rock and Wrap It Up started to grow and grow and grow, I became a big fan of the New York Yankees, who absolutely supported the charity.
Yeah, well, it's not that I'm necessarily a Los Angeles Dodger fan. I'm a Brooklyn Dodger fan, but and I'm not necessarily, don't hate the necessary San Francisco Giants, but the New York Giants.
Absolutely.
It's ingrained in me.
The New York Giants in the Bronx was across a river that could have been the Atlantic Ocean.
The New York Giants were in
Coogan's Bluff.
Yeah. But weren't they in Manhattan, and across the river was in the Bronx was the Bronx Bombers, the Yankees.
And that was the Bronx River that you crossed that went into the East River.
But anyway, getting back to your home run thing.
So it was very interesting. I was doing scientific research for a company. I worked for a lot of think tanks. People paid for my brain. And one company had this amazing instrument that under a microscope, you would be able to see the interface of minute distances. And they were able to use that in metallurgy. And I come along and they asked if I thought there were any biological applications because they had a very small marketplace. And over a period of about a year, I came up with applications that they could do, such as seeing the difference in size between large platelets and small red blood cells, which you could do with the measuring system. One of the coolest things that we came up with in those years was very, very young, the field of in vitro fertilization, IVF. And in that field, you literally were looking to micro inseminate an ovum or an egg with a tiny, tiny needle and insert one sperm into an ovum. And they were having a hard time because for whatever reason, eggs would break and they were precious because a lot of the women were infertile, men were infertile, and they didn't have a lot of opportunities to make mistakes. And I realized that if I could determine the thinnest part of the egg, and that is called the zona pellucida, tiny, tiny part of the egg, and if I could measure the thinnest part of the zona pellucida, I could then determine that would be the place to microinseminate. And I came up with that. And we introduced it to IVF labs that bought more of this measuring system that this company came up with. The company was in Princeton. We named the company Optech, Optical Technology. And it was a big hit.
Well, that sounds fascinating, and one day we'll go into it. I'm want to take you back to the San Francisco Giants and how you're measuring home runs.
Well, now we have to take a look at a measuring system is only using an optical sight, what you could see. In some cases, if it's a slide that has an egg on it, then that's a micro application. But what if we could use the same algorithms and use it for a macro application? And what I heard was, can we correct for magnification and use a macro application? And I got the idea because I was listening to a New York Yankee baseball game, and the announcer was Phil Rizzuto.
The scooter.
And Jesse Barfield hit a home run into the stands, second deck in Yankee Stadium. And Rizzuto, being Rizzuto, said, "Holy cow, how far did that ball travel? I wish I would know." And in an instant, it hit me. Well, I can measure that as long as I had a photograph of the stadium and know where the ball landed. I could convert my micro application algorithm to a macro application algorithm. And that's when the Yankees allowed me to go to their ballpark. And what I did was I put a photograph on a camera to make believe it was on a slide, so to speak. And the image of the camera, the image of the stadium came up on a small computer screen. And the elegance of this was I was able to correct for magnification using a very simple baseball analogy. And that is this. Any measurement on a computer uses an X and a Y axis. Every stadium has definitive numbers. And Yankee Stadium, you knew the distance from home plate to dead center, because every baseball stadium has that number.
Yeah.
And in Yankee Stadium, it was 408. So the distance from home plate to the dead part of center field was 408 feet. Well, that became my y-axis, and I was able to put that into my computer, and I just corrected for the length of how far the ball could go.
The height, yeah.
But I also now needed an x-axis. And what is the x-axis? There's no number that is written on a field from a place to a place, but then I remember my geometry. And in a triangle, if you could take home plate, first base, third base, home plate, you have a triangle. And 90-90 is the distance from home plate to first, and the distance from third to home plate is 90 feet. That means that the distance from first base to third base is 127.3 feet, which is a baseball number in every stadium. It's the exact same distance. I now conquered my need of having my x-axis, and now I was able to correct for all distance in any ballpark in the United States and Canada. And by putting in those two numbers, putting in the distance from home plate to dead center is different in every ballpark. But I knew that number. And the distance from first to third is the same in every ballpark, 127.3 feet. Once I put that into my little measuring system, I could put a cursor on home plate, and I could point to a place in the baseball stadium, and I got the diagonal of how far that distance is, and it's exact. So
yes, excuse me, Syd, I'm beginning to feel like I was 16 years old again in my high school calculus class, saying, "What the hell is he talking about?"
Well, just know that once you could correct for magnification using a photograph of a stadium, then you're able to measure any distance in the stadium and even out of the stadium. So if you had a place in a parking lot, and I'm going to get to that in a second, the longest home run I ever measured, you can calculate from home plate any distance that is in the stadium through a photograph of the stadium.
Yeah, now they do that. I know when I watch baseball games, most of the networks is pretty standard. When a home run, when someone hits a home run, as a matter of fact, you see the visual, the arc of the ball visually, and they then calculate how long the home run was, and going that. And we're also, they use that in golf, which is amazing.
Right,
and
I introduced it in baseball, in golf. I introduced it in your neck of the woods in 1992. I became very well known in baseball in 91. I wound up showing it to 17 different teams in Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium, and Citi Field, and Candlestick. As a team would come into the ballpark, the Mets and Yankees allowed me to do demonstrations in the visiting team's broadcasting booth. And I was able to get the majority of teams in Major League Baseball to see how this could be done.
And then now I have a question for you. Can you get a patent on that type of science? And could you then turn that into a business?
I didn't need a business. We just sold a lot more systems. I was there to sell systems. I was making a lot of money.
I can imagine.
Because they were already, paying me for all these applications that I was coming up with. But because of my work in sports, I was able to do quite a number of other things. I became friendly with some of the greatest baseball players, as well as the greatest broadcasters in baseball of that era, 30 years ago. And each one of them would tell me a story long and sitting at one time at a breakfast during the old timers weekend from a baseball company called Upper Deck. And Upper Deck had me as a guest there. And I wound up sitting next to one of the real famous New York Yankees. He's passed already 30 years. His name was Tommy Heinrich, and it was called Old Reliable. He played with Joe DiMaggio. And I sat next to him, and he was the hitting instructor in 1951 when the New York Yankees did not play grapefruit ball. They would go around the country playing against colleges. And he said to me, Syd, I was in USC Stadium, and this new player that we had named Mickey Mantle, 20 years old, hit a home run that went further out of the stadium than in the stadium. Dead center was 300 feet, and he swears it went 600 feet, which is a prodigious blow. In fact, I've read that the longest home run ever measured by Mantle was 565. Now, I will tell you that I have measured a longer home run, and it was information given to me by the pitcher that gave up the home run. I was working, showing the system to the Houston Astros. And I was working with Larry Durker, who was a pitcher on the Astros, and he was the color guy for the Astros, a fastball pitcher, very, very good pitcher in his day. And he said, Syd, I want to show you where a ball landed. I said, really? He says, here, let me show you Shea Stadium. And we had a photograph of Shea Stadium, and he points to a place in the parking lot of Shea Stadium. And he said, could you measure to this point? And I measured to that point 627 feet.
Wow.
And I said, that's impossible. He says, well, I will tell you who hit it, and I'll tell you who the pitcher was. I was the pitcher, and I was throwing that day. It was a very humid day, and the more humid it is, the further the ball travels. He was pitching 103 miles an hour, Malcolm.
Wow.
And Dave Kingman took him along, and it hit the Astro team bus in the parking lot. And that's how, and there was a driver on the bus. So the driver absolutely confirmed that the ball on a fly hit the team bus.
Yeah, that's what
home run we ever measured.
That's what kept Dave Kingman in the league, because he was a lousy fielder, and I think he struck out a lot.
Strikeout, home run.
But he could blast that out of the park. I remember him.
Well, there is a book called The Physics of Baseball by Dr. Jerry Adair of Yale. And he is one of my gurus. When I started coming up with this, I was doing a lot of interviews. And one of the men that had me on twice was Ralph Kiner. He was an announcer with the New York Mets. And he was a prodigious home run hitter, averaged 38 home runs for 10 years in a row. And Ralph Kiner had me on. Kiner's Corner was the name of his program. And Kiner told me the stories when he played in Mexico City, the ball would travel 40 to 50 feet further. And the outfield was set up to be that much further so that there were no cheap home runs. The higher the altitude,
the less air resistance. Yeah.
Not air resistance, it is as much gravity as it is anything else. You're off the ground. That's why in Colorado, the Colorado Rockies have a huge stadium because of the altitude. And Kiner was hitting balls out of Mexico City Stadium. One of the other things that we had, which was pretty interesting, there was something called the coefficient of restitution, COR. And right now in 2021, there's controversy because they are deadening the baseball. And that's a problem because there'll be much fewer home runs this coming season. When you figure that a ball is dropped, even though it's a hard ball, it's going to come up a little bit. That bounce is called the coefficient of restitution.
Mhm.
In baseball, it's 0.53. So if a ball is dropped, it's going to come back up a little more than half from what you've dropped it from.
Mhm.
They want to have the ball deadened to 0.45. So it'll only come up a little bit more, which means it's going to be harder to hit a ball out of the ballpark. And that difference of maybe 15 or 20 feet in distance traveled will be the difference between a home run and a long out. So this is going to be an interesting season coming up.
Well, they do so many things to, tweak the game. Like I remember like years ago when the pitcher Bob Gibson,
Sure.
I think Gibson had a 1 point something earned run average
Right.
for like 2 years in a row. So what they did is they lowered the pitching mound. So
Made it easier
it didn't
to
come in, the pitch didn't come in from that steep of an angle.
Right. Now, the perfect angle to hit is 39 degrees. If you have a natural swing of 39 degrees, the ball will travel the furthest. A ball that is hit doesn't go straight. It's called a parabola. The ball goes up and then gravity pulls it down at the end. The distance from the top of the apex of where the ball is gone its highest, 1/5 further is how much it's going to fall. So it's not going to travel this way. It's going to get to the top of the apex and then it's going to come down about 1/5 the distance that it traveled.
Yeah, well, I know now, when I watch a baseball game, they talk about not so much the arc. There's certain hitters that hit almost like line drives out of there. They say that
Right.
doesn't, that, I
No.
mean, that's power.
You have to have the 39-degree angle for the perfect distance of how high it'll go, how far it'll go. And Jerry Adair, if any of your viewers that are real sport fans, you should get this book, The Physics of Baseball by Dr. Jerry Adair.
Well,
some of the people that were in baseball at that time, I worked with a number of different networks. I worked with ESPN. I worked with Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 9, Channel 11 in New York. And Channel 2, there was a guy by the name of Chuck Will, and Chuck was a sport fanatic. And he looked at me and he said, "Syd, did you ever think of measuring the distance of golf drives?" I said, "I could do that." I said, "I just have to correct for the magnification of a golf course. So if I had an overhead shot of each of the holes and I knew the distance from where they're teeing off to where the hole is, and I could find an X distance, I could correct for magnification." He said, "I want to try this out. Would you be willing to come out for a week to one of our big events?" And I go, "Love to." And in 1992, I was flown out at that time to the Sherwood Country Club in Agoura Hills, California, which is one of the most beautiful courses in the world, to measure golf shots by the top golfers in the world at something called the Shark Shootout. Greg Norman had a tournament every year, a charity tournament, and Greg Norman invited the top golfers, and I set up for a week before it started, and we were able to measure golf drive distance. And it was very, very controversial because golf is really not a game of distance. Yes, it's great to hit the ball as far as you can, but it's the second shot that matters in golf, not the first shot. Because it's the second shot that's going to determine if you're going to get a par or not, or you're going to bogey or birdie. And the longest hitter that I measured for that particular tournament in 1992 was Tom Kite. Tom was the longest hitter. He was averaging 310 to 320 on his drives. Now, not every hole on a golf course is a driving hole. A lot of holes are dog legs, right and
Yeah.
left. You can't hit a driver on those holes. You're going to try to hit a 3-iron or 3-wood so that you can take advantage of that curve for the second shot. And it was an amazing time for me. I became friendly with John Daly. John Daly.
He was a big hitter.
He was a big hitter, and I was staying in a Holiday Inn in Agora Hills, and John Daly was the only golfer that would come there at night to hang out with his caddy. And once people knew what I was doing there, everybody was buying me drinks, and I was hanging with the caddies. And John Daly comes in, and he had asked me some questions on how the system was operating. But the other two sports that I did, which
yes, Syd, hold that for a minute. I have to adjust some equipment, so I'm going to put you on pause.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, we should be recording again.
Okay.
I have to see the pause because I haven't done that before. Anyway, talking about what, John Daly?
So to go back, CBS was so interested in golf drive measurement that they said to me, "Do you think it would work in football?" And I said, absolutely, because what I could give you in football is linear distance, not hashtag distance. So I could tell you, if you put a cursor on a running back that receives a kickoff, he may cover 20 yards on the hashtags, but he could have covered 60 yards going back and forth.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that for them. And then I could give them diagonal distance of how far a ball traveled in the air. So it could be 30-yard pass on the hashtag, but it could have been 70 yards cross field.
Wow.
And so they said they want to test it, but they had to have their announcer see if he would use it. So unbeknownst to me, they said, "Could you come down to Philadelphia on a Saturday? Would like you to meet our announcers." Didn't say anything who they were. And I said, absolutely. And I set my system up, tried it out, and I was able to do it. And I drove down with one of my daughters who kept me company. And we go on to this bus, and it was John Madden's bus. And John Madden was their announcer, along with his sidekick, Pat Summerall. And they had me demo the system to Madden and Summerall. They didn't say a word to me. They let me do all the talking, didn't ask any questions. And they said, "Thank you very much for the demonstration." My daughter and I get in my truck and we drive back to New York. And I received a phone call, and I was one of those first people to have a bag phone. It was a real phone like that in the military. And I get a call from Chuck Will. He said, "Syd, John loved it. Could you come back tomorrow? And we're going to be having the Eagle Cowboy game.
Wow.
And I'd like you to come down and set up and give John the numbers." And I did. And John loved it enough that that was one of the last days of the season. The following weekend was the first playoff game of the NFL, and it was the Giants versus the Vikings. And again, Madden wanted me to be at Giant Stadium, and we gave him the information, and he used it on the air. And then I said to CBS, I would like to sell you the system. And I did a proposal. And then a week later, John Madden quit CBS and gets hired by Fox for a ton of money, more than he was making at CBS. And I did not get that sale.
Oh, well, could you get it from where John Madden went?
He didn't. They paid him so much money, they didn't want to pay any more for me. But we wound up doing some other very cool things. I wound up meeting some people from NBC uh, who were interested in the women's golf tournament. And there was a golf course in the Bronx called Waukegan, and they were having the Women's Open there. At that time, Judy Inkster was the longest women's hitter. And I set up there. They loved the system. They didn't buy it. And then about a month later, I get a call. It is the playoffs of in the NBA. Syd, they said, could you measure vertical distance in basketball? I said, absolutely. And they had me set up at Madison Square Garden to measure Michael Jordan's vertical jump.
Wow.
And during a Chicago Bull, New York Knicks playoff game, I gave them those numbers. And because I was in Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks gave me a suite, which I had myself. Who comes into our suite? The president of the New York Knicks, Dave Checketts. And he brought with him one of his assistants, Ernie Grunfeld, who had been a very well-known basketball player on.
You ready to go to Syracuse? Where did Grunfeld go?
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
He played with Bernard King. They were called the Bernie and Ernie Show.
Bernie King. Did you realize that because of you, what you're talking about right now is standard almost in every sports network? You always hear distances and.
I introduced it 30 years ago because of my background in medicine and my background in doing micro measurement.
But you're not earning any residuals for it right now.
I don't need them.
Well, if you don't need them, you can assign them to me. I could use some.
You could use them. I'll take you for lunch when we go out to LA.
As a well, not as an athlete, but I've played everything, and I always get amazed by these people who can hit the ball 600 feet or hit the golf ball 300, but I get the abilities that they have. I remember, or even hitting a baseball. I remember listening one time to when I was a kid, Ted Williams. I interviewed him.
Right.
And I think Ted Williams, when he went to the Air Force, was like 10 instead of 20 as normal. He had like 10-15 eye abilities. And they asked him, "How do you know when a pitcher is throwing a curve or a fastball?" He says, "Oh, I see the ball when it leaves the pitcher's hands, whether it's turning or not. I don't even." When I went, you probably remember, in the old days, they have this thing called bat away, where you can go and hit balls. It's a automatic pitcher. And when the pitcher when they would throw me something at 65, 70 miles an hour, it was fast. Then, as you were talking about baseball, they're pitching 100 miles per hour. Yeah, my mind doesn't even know that he pitched it and the catcher has it already.
Right.
These people that have these reflexes or eyesight are amazing. I sort of marvel at it. I marvel at you discovering your scientific ability, discovering all the things that make sports now enjoyable to us.
Yep. Let me just turn this off 1 second.
You can answer. We'll listen. We'll listen to
spam. Probably want to sell me car insurance.
Right. No. You want a free trip.
Yeah.
I get a free trip. Thank you for going to coming to the Sheraton.
So one of the interesting things when we measured Michael Jordan was that the Knicks had me measure their star player without telling NBC. I was giving numbers to a woman, Turidomi was her last name, and she was feeding it to a announcer named Mike Fratello.
Yeah, they're still there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the NBC announcer, but the Knicks asked me to measure Roger Starks, who had a very high vertical jump. And the difference was that Starks had a 35-inch vertical jump, but Michael Jordan would only jump as high as he needed to. Michael had a 40+ inch vertical jump. But if the player that was taking him on defense did not jump that high. Michael wouldn't jump
Yeah,
that
right.
high. He could get his jump shot off. And I was introduced to Michael's father, who sadly was killed a
Yeah.
couple of years later. But Michael's father wanted all the numbers to give Michael, which I did.
But did you ever measure the jumps of? There were two players. I think one was 5'6" and one was 5'7", who could dunk a ball backwards. Muggsy Bowe,
Yeah,
and I think he was like 5'5", 5'6", and they could dunk. They could get off the ground and dunk a ball.
it's all genetic.
And Spud Webb.
Yeah, both of them were able to dunk, and they could jump literally 48 inches.
Well,
When you think
4
of that,
feet.
4 feet. And there was a guy named Thompson who was on North Carolina that also had a
I'm forgetting his name. Yeah, I know you're talking about.
But I was good friends when I was in teaching with a ball player who went to Canarsie High School, and I became friendly with him. He was a couple of years younger than me, named Lloyd Free, World Be Free.
World Be Free, yeah.
And he had a 40-inch vertical jump, and he was 6'2". And that makes all the difference in the world, because at that difference, just like Steph Curry has probably a 30-inch vertical jump, but he's so accurate that he gets the ball up so quickly that you don't know when to take him. You don't know if he's going to go around you, or if you don't know if he's going to take a step back like James Harden does. Harden's able to fake you out by making you think he's going to go around you, but he takes a step back, jumps up and shoots.
Well, it's funny when Curry is on, he's they call it in his zone. He hits like 40 feet out. He takes a step into the front court and jumps it up and hits it. It seems like it doesn't hit anything.
Just like Klay Thompson. Thompson has the same abilities, except he's been injured for the last couple of years. I'm a big Steph Curry fan.
Yeah, no, I love Steph Curry. I love his attitude.
Me too. And he's smart, and it's interesting. I met him when he was 3 years old.
Oh, really?
I was invited to the 1994 NBA All-Star game at the Target Center in in Minneapolis, and I was the guest of a basketball player named Laverne Tart. Laverne had been an All-American at Bradley, MVP of the NIT in '62, and a good friend of mine. I played basketball with him for many years. As a surprise, Malcolm, he invited me without, telling me. He asked Diane, and I became part of his posse for the weekend.
Wow.
And I went out there with 5 other of his friends. I was the only Caucasian, but he had one stipulation. We all had to dress in suits. The women had to dress like they were in business. And we were his posse. We all dressed up wherever we went, suit and tie,
wow,
polished shoes, and we were his group. And we went in everywhere. We were able to go into the NBA breakfast, the NBC breakfast. I met Del Curry, Steph's father.
Yeah.
During that time, Del was a very, very well-known three-point shooter. And he was in a three-point shooting tournament with none other than Steph Curry's coach from the Golden State Warriors. And he won the tournament. Del didn't win it. So, I was able to meet all of these people years ago.
I think I want to do another show with you, forgetting about science and everything. When your sports background and the people that you met and the game, and what you did with the mathematics.
You know what? It was a blessing. I was at the right place at the right time. I had a computer background before most people. I worked for a company that was introducing for the first time laser-based cell analysis in 1983. And it was run by a PC by IBM. So I was trained in PC. I knew how to do writing. I was able to do my own programming. Uh, and because of that, it came easy to me. And when I was always a problem solver, if people told me what they needed, I was able to figure it out or know where to go to figure it out.
Now
Would love to speak to you further.
yeah, you remind me of, and I'm
I
trying to
sent
remember.
you,
I'm trying to remember the name of the movie where I think he was a general manager for, I think it was Oakland, where with his program, he
Billy
knew,
Bean.
yeah,
Yeah, Billy Bean. He was able to get the best players.
the best players that people didn't know, but he had the team, and each of them blended into the other,
Right.
and they thought he was crazy.
I love sports. I've been a sports guy forever. As you know, I played ball for many years. But I also
We never met. How tall are you?
a little over 6 foot.
Oh,
Uh,
that's tall for a Jewish kid.
yeah, and I'm strong. I weight lift, and my family is genetically strong. My father was a weightlifter. I lifted, and
Well, I told you, my father was a bantamweight fighter.
yeah,
But I don't know if I told the story here, but I remember my father was pretty broad, his arms and his legs, and bantamweight is like 116 pounds, 120 pounds. I remember one time asking, he passed away when I was young. I remember asking my brother, I said, how come, it's strange, Dad was a bantamweight and he's 5'7", 5'8", that, how do you do that? And my brother looked at me and said, which father are you talking about? I said, Dad. He said, if he was 5'2", 5'3", you were lucky.
wow,
And then I went back to the pictures of my bar mitzvah, and he was my height, and I was 5'2". But I
understood.
remember he was big.
We had. I was also blessed on my block where I live now. Um, I've lived in a lot of places through business. I've managed a lot of companies, and I was moving from Chicago to New York. At the time, we had two of our kids, two very young kids, maybe 4 and 1.5. And so Diane had to come out and look for a house on her own. I was traveling a lot. She saw 4 or 5 houses around 10 miles. I had to be near an airport. I was flying a lot. And one of the houses, she says, Syd, house needs a little work. It's a really big house, 13 rooms.
13 rooms.
But our neighbor is Red Holtzman.
Huh?
And I was a big Nick fan. And I said, buy the house. She said, you didn't see it. I said, if the block is good for Red, it's good for me. And she did. I never saw the house till we went to closing. And it was a great house.
I mean, one of my sports favorite stories is I lived in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and down the block from me was Earl de Pearl Monroe.
Sure.
So occasionally, when I would walk out, I'd see him. But occasionally, some of the other ball players came there. Went to visit him. And one time I came out, and who was standing, hailing a cab, Jabbar, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he was wearing platform heels. That was when the platform shoes were.
Sure, the 70s.
Right. So I told my brother, I said, that's strange. He's wearing platform. He said, yeah, he always wanted to be 8 foot tall.
Well, I also have a nice Earl the Pearl story. We did become friendly with Red. We never asked for tickets. When Red was inducted in the Hall of Fame in 1985, Diane and I were invited.
Wow.
And she couldn't go because of my kids were young, but I went, and I wound up, I'll show you this, you can take a look at this. This is, we all got all the same little cups that day. And I wound up sitting next to Earl Monroe, and Earl was the only Nick that came to the induction, which really pissed me off a little bit.
That's strange.
It was strange, but I sat next to Earl and we became friendly, and he leaned over to me. He said, God, I don't think I'm going to ever get into this place. And I said to him, I wanted to smack him. I said, bro, you'll be here before anyone else. You are that great. He got inducted next year.
Yeah. Anyway, we have to trade some stories. I have to hear about your involvement,
Yeah.
because again, I'm a sports freak.
Well, there was, I did run a lot of sporting events. I was known in this neighborhood to bring people together. And I ran a basketball tournament for 35 years in honor of a man who was murdered, a ball player, the first Jewish All-American named Syd Tannenbaum. Syd Tannenbaum.
He was murdered? I remember the name.
Yeah, played for NYU. Was on the first Knick team with Frank Mangiapane and Hank Rosenstein. And in his honor, he was murdered in 1986. I helped found with another 20 ball players this tournament and scholarship. And I'm the only one alive. And I still run the scholarship. We don't run the tournament anymore. But the tournament was one of the fabulous tournaments in all of New York. And we would have anywhere from 60 to 100 teams, 4-on-4, play on 4 courts, single elimination.
That must have been fun.
It was fabulous. And you would know some of the ball players that played in it. Anthony Mason, who was
Anthony Mason was built like a truck.
Yeah. So
when
Mason,
when he played with the Knicks, who's the others? Power forward.
Oakley was Dave DeBusschere was one.
Oakley, yeah, Charles Oakley.
The other ones that we had a player that went on to play on the 76ers named Speedy Claxton.
Name is familiar, but I don't remember anything about him.
But all of this was through Red, because Red helped me get the first tournament in '87. Red got me Walt Frazier to be the keynote speaker.
Clyde, yeah, he's doing commentary now. Is he still the announcer?
Yes. And
anyway, I hate to interrupt us, but we've been on for about 40 minutes.
Whoa.
We've been on for 40 minutes.
That's hard to believe.
You realize I could talk with you forever. Because you're talking about my passion as a kid that extends now. I still watch every sports. Well, the sports.
I was very lucky to be part of this. Very humbled to be part of this and to really enhance the game. I had an article written about my home run measurement 2 years ago, talking about how I set the framework of how all measurement is done in baseball.
Yeah, you're the standard bearer. Anyway, we're not going to be on, as I remember, we're not going to be on for 2 weeks. We're going to be
on the 13th will be the next one.
And who are we having on?
I think Christy Ecton.
And then the next week we have
Jackie Martley.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, then we have some other people.
You have a good trip.
Thank you. I have a happy Zisen Pesach. Healthy one, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, and if you get lonely and sort of have a withdrawal, we always can do Zooms, no matter where you are.
I could send you more articles if you're interested. We'll see.
Yeah, send me about it. Sounds good. Okay.
You got it.
Bye.
Thank you.